Hello, Dear Mindfulness Collective. This right here, right now, is the joy of being a live stream coming to you live from Brooklyn, New York. And if you're watching this anywhere other than twitch.tv/deepmindfulness, come on over. Lately we've been trying to figure out, should we have it everywhere where you're watching it? FaceTime, YouTube, all those things. So, folks, we're very happy to have you here. It is an unbelievable honor to be alive, be able to be here with you, and have a little fun, do some meditation, and then roll out the Q&A, chats about our life, what's going on, what's happening. Thank you all for joining us here. Folks are already beginning to jump in. Pal says, I love the intro music choice. Well, thank you so much. We actually have a brand new intro. I don't know if anyone noticed that today, but the intro is brand new. Hopefully folks like that. It took an unfathomable amount of time to render that intro video. It took, well, that one actually only took like 14 hours. The timer video, just the timer for the meditation, took at least like 24 hours just to render. Anyway, this is very interesting stuff. I can tell everyone here is like, oh my God, tell me about the render times on these videos. Folks, welcome. Welcome from Brooklyn. Where are folks coming from? I'm here from Brooklyn, joining you. Hopefully you're doing well. Where are folks joining in from? Yeah, where are folks? How are folks doing? Where are folks coming in from? Where are we getting our hellos from? Let's see, Washington, D.C. Oh, welcome. Good to have you here. Live from New Mexico. Whoa, what a lovely experience. And hello from Toronto. We have Liz, Wise seclusion. I was like, why seclusion? Wise seclusion. Welcome from DC. Little Liner, good to have you back from Toronto. Nick here from Sweden. Good to have you back. Nick is our co-host, if you can see here. Nick has been such a long time and consistent, kind supporter to us. It's just such a honor to have him here. Patrick is here from LA. Welcome. Good to see you, Patrick. Let's see. Rory from Kingston, Ontario. So nice to see you here. Farmcat. I'm new to the Deep Mindfulness Collective. Where can I find the live stream? Okay, interesting. Okay, so that means if you're on the Discord, you can't see the live stream. So let me put this. Okay. Let's see. We're live now. I forgot that Discord can read what we're doing, but they can't see what's happening. So we should probably, if anyone asks if you see that they're from Discord, if you can see that, then just let them know where we are. Twitch.tv/deepmindfulness. Folks, what an exciting day. It's another day in quarantine. You know, I know it's there's many ways in which it's tragic. There's many ways in which it's very difficult, which I don't want to downplay. And it's a major reordering of our experiential system. The entire world is reordering itself. And we get to decide to some degree how much are we going to return to our previous order. Because once things start coming back online, once we start making the decisions, even now, we're already shaping the way we are going to relate to the world. And I just want to encourage folks to consider that. We'll talk a little bit more about that in relationship, especially to the multiple self model, because we're going to have multiple drives wanting to pull us in different directions. So we'll talk a little bit about that after the meditation. Chris, welcome from Western Australia. Lovely to have you. What time is it in Australia? Is it 12? No. I think Australia is 9 hours difference? I can't remember. So folks, today we're going to meditate for 25 minutes. I'm going to encourage folks to find a nice comfortable position, something you can maintain for the duration of the sit, and that way we can train the body to be still throughout the practice. Training the body to be still is a forerunner to training the mind to be still. 11 p.m. in Australia. Very interesting. Okay, well. Oh, Ralph. Geez Louise, welcome from Brooklyn. It's so nice to see you here. Welcome. Lovely to have you. As always. Let's see what else. Okay, so 11 p.m. in Australia. Well, that's lovely. I really love that. Just this experience that we're all here together, that we have this, separated thing, and there's a way in which we are actually here together, that we're here in a community. And I think that we can miss that or forget it and feel very isolated in our experience of self. But something that I try to cultivate personally is just this sense of, as a group, that we exist as a group. And of course, the mind will tell us, no, I see. This is the way my mind will sound. No, I see myself all alone here. There's no group. This is all just digital. Doesn't count. Well, that's one voice. And like we've been talking about with the multiple self model, we have to pick which voice we listen to and which one we cultivate in that way. So just to consider actively cultivating the sense that we are all here together. There's quite a few people watching right now. Even the people who are watching later on the replay, just to mentally expand our see-in space a little bit to include whoever's here. We're going to begin in just a moment, but I wanted to share something really exciting. So I am working with a partner on creating a whole set of meditations, a whole series for frontline medical workers, and anyone who's in significant distress, but it's going to be geared towards frontline medical workers, EMTs, nurses, doctors, this kind of thing. And it's super fun, and it's really interesting to think from that perspective, and to think from the perspective of like really straightforward, like what might a doctor want to hear in order to use these tools. And it's helped me sort of formulate, why is it that we're doing any of this? Because that's a very common question. Like, why are we paying attention to mental audio or any of these things? Like, why do that? Of course, people who have done it for a while know, I do it for this reason or that reason. But for people who don't, it's really interesting. So this is the formula that I've been working with, and I like this a lot. I think of it like a geometry proof. Because of this, that, because of that, this, in a very simple way. So here's the formula. If you're familiar with meditation, you know this formula, but it's felt like a little bit of a breakthrough. Okay. All that we can have contact with in our experience is our senses. Given. Next, our senses have certain qualities, and they themselves do not have worries, distresses, fears, concerns about the future, all these things. They have certain qualities. Given. By observing and experiencing those qualities, it shapes our relationship to the entire world. And you could call that, the sort of framework of what mindfulness is. But to me, that seems like a very easy way for people to understand why would it be that we do what we do. And we're going to do that right now. So folks, finding a nice, comfortable position that you can maintain for the duration of the sit, wiggling the body a little bit so you can wiggle out all those wiggles. And if you're sitting, making sure that your knees are lower than your hips. This is your hips. And sitting at the edge of your cushion or seat so the hips can tip downwards a little bit. This allows the spine to naturally balance on top of that, which allows the upper spine to naturally balance on top of that. Otherwise, usually we'll sit back, and so the spine naturally goes this way. But we'll sit back against a chair and lean back. That's usually how chairs are shaping us. They have that curve for the lower back, which doesn't make any sense to me often. And sometimes I think that those chairs are made to make it uncomfortable so you'll leave sooner. But then I wonder, why are airplanes like that? So it's a curve like this, but after about 5 minutes, it becomes very uncomfortable. So we want the hips to be tilted down, which allows the spine to curve naturally this way. So finding that nice comfortable position. If you need to move the body, feel free, but just wait, 30 seconds, a minute, so you're doing so consciously and not forced to by your unconscious whims. Finding that position. And in a moment, we'll begin. Let's see if our new timer works. This is the video overlay that took 25 hours to work. So if you see a timer appear in a moment, we will have had success. If not, it's fine. We'll go back to the old timer. And we will begin. Beginning by taking a few comfortable deep breaths and just feeling the body rise and fall. And we'll begin by sweeping through the body to be sure we're not holding any undue tension. Each time we relax a different part of the body, we're letting it just succumb to gravity just a bit, letting the micro tensions in the body release. So even if it feels like a part of the body is already relaxed, just tuning into how we might relax it just a tiny bit more. So starting at the top of the head, relax the brow. Relax the muscles behind the eyes. Allow the face to go smooth. Relax the back of the tongue, letting it drop just a tiny bit. And relax the jaw, allowing it to go slack. No need to hold it closed. Letting this relaxation spread to the neck and the shoulders. The upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, and relaxing the hands. Tuning into the subtle sensations in the palms of the hands and tips of the fingers. And without needing to control the breath, just letting the body breathe as it will. Notice the subtle, natural tightening and relaxing of the upper chest and upper back as the breath comes and goes. Relaxing the belly and the lower back. Relaxing the hips and the upper legs. The knees and calves. The ankles, and relaxing the feet. And for a moment, simply tuning into relaxation throughout the entire body. One collection of material. Not worrying about capturing every piece, just collecting what we can as one general set of data. Notice that in order to capture all of this data, zooming in doesn't really support this. It's helpful if we zoom out as though we're observing almost from the periphery. without needing to let this slightly zoomed out experience go away, without needing it to collapse. We're going to add a tiny bit of zooming in, a little bit of the part of the mind we use to focus our attention, just noticing some sensations of the breath. Maybe 75% of our conscious real estate is on the relaxing or neutral sensations of the body, or any other set of material that falls into awareness. And 25, maybe 30% of our real estate is attending to the sensations of the breath. In other words, simply letting the breath sensations be known within this larger field. And letting the awareness be kind, recognizing that its nature isn't to judge or to make anything different. This larger awareness simply knows the experience. If it's helpful to use labels, we can label the breath experience this, referring to this precise breath sensation at this precise moment. And we can label this larger awareness all, referring to its general tendency to be able to hold large amounts of data without needing it to be different or needing to know any particular detail. For some, it'll simply be all body sensations. For some, it will include more data. Whatever feels right for you now. And if we get distracted, recognizing that this is natural, and enjoying the experience of return, consciousness re-arising. Now we're going to make a slight transition. Simply abiding in this larger awareness, this part of the mind that doesn't need things to be different. It simply knows our experience. It doesn't always have to be zoomed out. It can know any experience, but it's the part of us that isn't pushing or pulling. That isn't preferring, it's simply experiencing. Cultivating this as a kind awareness. Adding this ever so slight +1 charge of kindness. And letting this kind awareness be the place that we return to, that we can reside in. Or for now at least, simply knowing that experience. What is that like compared to when we identify as a self? This is me, this is mine. This kind awareness doesn't prefer, except for a bit of kindness, and so it doesn't really need a self. But of course, selves arise. So at any given moment, a self may arise. So noticing that we're experiencing a selfing phenomena. Perhaps we're identifying, and in which case this self feels like me. The world is occurring to me, and this is my experience. This isn't bad. This is simply a different organization of the same sense data. And seeing if we can use our intuition to tune into what the need of this self is. If awareness doesn't prefer and it doesn't need a self, when a self arises, it typically does because it's asserting a need. Often these needs are dramatically simple. It needs to feel safe, So it craves for an imagined future that is safe for it, needs to feel heard. So it begins to speak loudly. So even if we don't know explicitly what the need is, if a self is arising, simply knowing there is a need. That is the cause of this self forming. This is a very subtle form of a yearning. Maybe simply a yearning for this moment to be different. More pleasurable, less unpleasant. So looking for that need, when it arises, in the mind we can simply label it as a need. We don't need to know the content. Simply that a need or want is arising. And remembering that these wants, or below these, the underlying need, these are natural. They're not a problem. They're not something to be gotten rid of. And sometimes when we have contact with this need or even the want, this means we get pulled into its gravitational force, which usually amplifies identification, the sense that this is an urgent need, and often that this is my need. So first we mentally label the need, referring to either the need or the want. It's all the same for this process, this point. And then labeling whether we're noticing identification or whether we're experiencing it as something we're observing. Identification is me, mine. This is my experience. Also quite natural to occur. Or the observation, yes, look at the needing and selfing phenomena arising within this human body-mind. This is observing. If we're thinking this, thinking the process of observing, this is often just more identification. But awareness, this part of us that doesn't need anything to be different, can observe. Simply know the phenomena. So first, noting or mentally labeling the need, noting or labeling whether there's identification or whether we're simply observing the phenomena arising. Without needing it to be different, without needing the need to go away or the self to stop arising. In which case we'd note, or if it's helpful, label, observing. And staying with the practice, staying in stillness, allowing a tiny bit of light to enter the eyes, eventually allowing the eyes to rest on a single point as they fully open. Noticing if the larger, spacious quality of open eyes affords more awareness, or if identification arises. And if identification arises, knowing that this is quite natural. If we want it to be different or treated as unnatural or alien, this is simply more identification. Not a problem, just nature. And letting this moment here, with our eyes open, be the great teacher, showing us how we might bring this practice into every aspect of our life. Oh, looks like our timer movie started again. So making any adjustments you need to allow the body to be comfortable. Ooh. So the meditation will have its effect either way. However, if we, right now at this moment, simply cultivate an awareness of the residue, of the momentum of the practice we just experienced, this will help magnify and extend the effects of the meditation in our lives. So simply noticing it, even if it's just in the periphery, just the flavor of how the meditation sort of is seeping into this particular moment still. And yeah, what was that experience like? What happened and what do you like now? So as I will mention each time, there's many ways that I could find out about your experience. One would be, what are our options? I could look for smoke signals. Perhaps you could make some layered smoke signals and send those from here, and I could observe them over the horizon, and I could find out a little bit about your experience. But the easier way would be for you to just tell me right now. So you can do that through text, or if you'd like, I'm going to put see if this works. This is a new command we just programmed in. Boom. I'm going to put the Zoom link in the chat, and I'm going to open Zoom. Don't forget that part. And if you want to join in via voice for now, I think we're just doing voice. Maybe we'll do video if people want. I like that idea too. You're welcome to join by voice. For a little while we were doing the voice by Discord, but there's always a technical glitch, and this just seems very much simpler. So, oh, it froze my camera. Very nice. Well done, Zoom. Okay, let's fix that. Okay, that's a nice frame to freeze my camera on, right? It always it does this every time we turn Zoom on, so don't worry. We'll be back. There we go. Look at that. I'm back. I exist again. A little camera conflict there. So, yeah, what was that experience like? What happened? And what are you like now? So, Ariadne Haska. Ariadne. Wait, Ariadne. I remember this. Ariadne. Tell me if I got that right. Haska. That's such a great name. It's always fun tracking down selfing, isn't it? It's always fun, and it's interesting because what I find is I'll track down selfing, and some part of me will be like, "You're not supposed to be selfing." I've read the Ariad Keen. Oh, knee. Okay, I was like, "Whoa, I got that wrong." Husky. Oh, Ariadne Husky. Okay, I've read the Buddhist writings. You're not supposed to have selfing experiences. Ah ha ha ha. Well, that is a strong misinterpretation of the Buddhist doctrines. If that's what you're into, that's the kind of thing you get down with. Actually, what it is that the selfing can arise without a need to be pulled into its gravitational well. So that's really what we're describing, is that the need arises, and maybe the identification arises, and there's some part of us that's like, oh, I don't want that to happen. And we say, oh, yes, of course, identification would arise, a preference would arise. Identification is married with preference, totally natural. There they are, but I don't need to get pulled into them and think that that is my experience, that is me, or there's the only experience. We can, if we want, we can get pulled into an identity if that would be helpful, if it would serve the world, and in many cases, it does serve the world. Come on, let's be honest here. Being neutral isn't the only way to help the world. Yeah, spot the chain. You're fine. Get better at it. Exactly. Veritable vagabond. I think you're calling me a hoe. No, it says ho. Maybe that's ho mataki yasi. Maybe that's the meaning. So Tom says, is selfing sensations which arise that are not settled and perfectly peace meditation sensations. Whoa. Okay, I need to understand this. And if I'm reading this incorrectly, just let me know. But if I might need clarification. Veritable Vagabond is asking me how do I say my name. My name is Janusz. It is emphasis on the first syllable, and what was I going to say? It has a sh sound in it, which I'm not worried about. You can just use the American sh. Janusz. Okay, Tom. Is selfing sensation which arises that are not settled and perfectly peaceful meditation sensations? Okay, Tom. So I'm going to tell you right now, it would be easier if I can answer this question over Zoom. No pressure. I'll put the Z in there one more time. Again, no pressure. Oops, wrong character, wrong setting. Boom. I'm 100% sure this will be easier to answer by voice, but I'm happy to answer by text if you prefer. So I'll start now, and if you want to jump on there, we can clarify. So when you say, is it meditation sensation? Basically, any sensation is a meditation sensation. Any sensation. Okay. Let's see. Tom just joined us. Hey, there you are. Excellent. Tom, question for you: do you prefer to stay invisible, or just audio, or are you okay appearing on screen?
Either way is fine.
Okay, I'm going to turn you down a little bit here. Okay, so will you do just a quick little audio check? Will you say hello a couple times?
What? One sec, it's echoing for me.
Oh, right. So you're going to want to turn off the live stream and just listen to.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So, and headphones are ideal too. Okay. So the point is, tell me your question. Help me understand your question. One sec.
Mm-hmm.
So just for clarification.
Yep.
When we say selfing, is that when sensations arise which aren't perfectly settled, or sensations of tensing, or?
So sorry, I'm going to interrupt you here. It was very loud a second ago. Now it's very quiet.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Now I can't.
It's still pretty quiet. I think that mic might not be the one picking it up, but it's okay. So just speak up a little bit more.
Is this better?
Much better.
Okay, I'll just use this one then.
Great.
Yeah, so is selfing sensations just tensing sensations and, mind herein sensations, which are not kind of getting on board with sitting down, not moving, and so peaceful meditation sensations, maybe you could say.
Yeah, well, any of these, let's see, I want to make sure. Okay, great. Here's this. Okay, I'm trying to make you appear here somewhere. So any of those could be selfing sensations here. I'm going to have you appear. Let's put you up here. There we go. So any sensations could be what we might call selfing sensations. So in a way, it's almost simpler right now if we don't disaggregate what selfing sensations are necessarily built out of. Because we could say, well, is it, Shinzen talks about how selfing sensations are a coagulated relationship of any two of the see, hear, feel, in. I found that somewhat helpful, but mainly it's more intuitive, and the way I sort of talk about it is more intuitive, and it makes it a little easier to just say, okay, this is what we'll call selfing experience, and if you experience it as self, then we'll call it self. It's sort of like a intentional, vague definition. So the way that I would describe it is it's so straightforward. It's often like this thing of explaining water to a fish. You've had the experience before, many, many times, like right now. Okay, so I have this is sitting here, right? I can, from me, my perspective, this is my iPhone. I know it's my phone, right? It even has my messages on it, right? There's an experiential structure. This is mine. You have less of that relationship to this, right? I mean, just by its nature. However,
Mm-hmm.
if you own an iPhone, you're going to have a little bit, right? There's going to be a little bit of like, yeah, well, that's my brand, right? That's a lot of what brands are, is to create an identification with them. So if you look around at anything in your home it belongs to you, right? Anything at all, and you can imagine someone taking that away from you, stealing it. That part of us, yeah, there you go. That part of us that identifies with it, connects with it, would be injured, damaged, whatever. Now, whatever that's built out of, see, hear, feel, if it's restful, if it's not restful, like whatever those things are, just to know that the I experience is this thing of it is happening to me. It has this sort of centralized cone view of reality. Reality is what is happening to me, or even the me experience or the I experience. You can emphasize this by, like, anyone watching this can emphasize this by just in your mind going like, this is me. This is my experience. Look around, sort of like, yeah, this is my experience. It's happening to me. And there's a sense of this is me. That's what me feels like. Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes it's spatial. It feels like it's like, it's the self is back here somewhere. So anything in that range, we're going to call selfing. And selfing is often a kind of expression of a preference, a wanting. So even with this as an example of this, like, black metal and glass object, the identification with it is in part. It keeps thinking that I'm trying to give it messages when I'm tapping on it, or talk to it. This object, even the identification, is a kind of gripping. It's a kind of like, stay, don't go, you're mine. Like it's the mind and body continuously reinforcing mine, 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 mine. And it just is always sort of doing that just to keep this in the sort of me experience. What we can do is we can identify with that. Well, this is mine, and of course it is. Leave me alone. Give me my phone. I'm not going, whatever. And we know this. If we've ever I've wanted, this particular phone before I got it. I was like, oh, I want that phone, the camera, the thing. And there's this sort of reaching out. I want this thing to be here. And then once it's here, something will be satisfied. This self that's arising will be satisfied. So it's a reaching out because of some imagined need. If I get this thing, then my creative side will be fulfilled. I'll get to take these magical pictures. Whatever it is, there's a reaching out and a need for that thing to be fulfilled. And so the self experience is one mostly where it's reaching out and grabbing. And so today we are watching selfing arise, which was we're just looking at just in this preference, the system just preferring anything, just leaning towards or away from anything. And whether that is see, hear, feel is a little bit questionable, because even from like old-timey Buddhist doctrine, the tendency of the system to lean forward or to lean away from things isn't necessarily considered tied to any one particular sense gate. There's a way in which any part of us can be leaning towards or pushing away from things. However, if I were to say the biggest one that people report where it exists is in the body, is a subtle emotional sort of push or pull against things. So does that help clarify it all? I know
Yeah,
that's a lot of
totally.
data. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what was your experience in that process?
Like gripping, tightening sensations, maybe a little bit of hearing, mind, sound, um, of some thoughts, but they just kind of came and went.
Came and went.
Yeah,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, that was pretty much my experience.
Nice. Yeah, and I think that's the key, is to see if we can detect those sensations. I'm curious, when you detected selfing sensations arise, was there a variety of relationships to it? Was there sometimes when you were identified and sometimes when you just simply observed, okay, this leaning, pushing, pulling occurred, or was it more one or the other?
Mm, not really sure. at the moment, my experience just kind of comes and then it goes really quick.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of reflection.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
one way to get into that is to just look for preference. Look for not even there's a difference between I prefer X because that's a pretty clear example of I. Like, okay, so here's an example of a preference and a wanting that isn't necessarily an I. I think it oscillates. I want a beverage right now, and I'm hoping that my wife can hear me speaking right now as she's doing her homework and is willing to bring over the water that I had prepared for myself but forgot to bring over. So this part of me is like, I want this. And then another part is I can just observe, oh, look, that occurred. Ah, so magical. Thank you, my dear. That's psychic communication right there. A part of me can observe that that occurred. This system wanted a thing, and there was a reaching and a grabbing and a thing, and that occurred as part of the system versus this sort of like, hey, where's that drink? Where's the thing? Right? It's sort of it's happening
Janos,
for me. Yes.
seems like your stream on YouTube has been removed for violating YouTube's terms of service. Just so you
Interesting.
know.
Interesting. I wonder if did I swear? It's
I'm not sure.
okay.
Did you play any music or anything that
No. Okay. One sec. I'm gonna say in the chat.
might just be on my end?
No, probably not.
No, it's dead for me too.
Okay.
Okay, so folks, come on over to twitch.tv/deep mindfulness. So this is helping me remember why I switched to to Twitch because this is exact. Do you know that I got copyright striked for violating their terms of service for silence in the silent meditation? They were like, "Oh no,
What?
somebody else has already used that audio, so you can't use it." And I was like, "I'm out." I was like, "I'm done." And then the whole thing happened with the Rajnishi, where we watched a video on stream and commented,
Yeah.
which is fully legal, fully allowed, and then they gave us a copyright strike. So this is one reason why
Great.
people are like not live. And the thing is, since the stream has been stopped, they're going to. Oh, thank you so much. We got a follow here from Ulisfav. Oh, P.S. If anyone is here on Twitch, you can follow, and we love that. Thank you, Ulisfav, and thank you, Ariadne. Ariadne, thank you so much for joining us here. Yeah, so just to complain for one more second about YouTube. Yeah, and since the stream has been taken off, they're going to adjudicate this for 3 months before they decide if it was BS or not, which every time it's happened, it's BS. So the stream gets shut down for months. And I was like, I can't do this. So that's why I came over here. I forgot. I was thinking maybe I should go back to YouTube alone. Anyway, that's that. So any other question or anything coming up?
No, maybe about the Buddhist view. Is the Buddhist view is that there's like five skandhas, right?
Go on. Tell me what you.
You were talking about how selfing sensation was not just like within one of the sense gates,
Yeah,
I think.
It's so funny because I've this is all stuff. I mean, I'm trained in like this very traditional way, and I'm still like, okay. I'm like literally looking up five skandhas again. As soon as I see it, I'm like, all right, of course. Nope, not Scandal the movie. Literally, I mean, it's good that this is coming up. So in terms of the structure of self, the thing is that Buddhism, it has so many different versions of the way it constructs self. So, okay. Okay. It's another translation for aggregates. Yes. So, I forget. Yeah. So there's this, yeah, they'll say that it's the five aggregates that these different, sort of pieces come together to create, this experience of self. The thing is that you know Shinzen long enough to know that I could make a very reasonable argument, which is the main argument that Shinzen makes, is that all we experience is sensing. There's just sensing, right? That's a reasonable argument. Another argument, which is just as reasonable, could be all we experience is emptiness. There's nothing but emptiness, and everything, every form that we experience is just a sort of illusion, and they're all like replacing themselves. And another one could say that there's nothing but awareness. Awareness is the only experience that exists, and everything just happens within awareness, but awareness is the one constant that's there. All of these are valid phenomenological arguments. What happens is that in the Buddhist doctrine, they say, well, this is the one way it is. It's the five aggregates. And then somewhere over here, they'll say, okay, it's just this thing over here. And they're fully willing often to contradict themselves. And then, whatever, different people will say they are or are not contradicting themselves. I've personally found the five aggregates not to be the most useful for me to navigate my perceptual reality. So, and also because often the definitions of each one of these things is not they're very hard to pin down. What's it called? Just from the list here, this is a translation that I don't usually use, but form, sensation, perception, mental formations, consciousness. I use some of those sometimes. I like mental formations as a way of describing things. Sensation obviously is pretty central to the way that I teach. Form or matter or rupa, that I talk about rupa it actually quite differently than is often talked about, because they say it is like there is rupa, and then there's sort of all the mental junk that gets put on top of that. And that I like to take that idea of form and actually, or rupa rather, raw data, raw sense data without a conceptual layer, and turn it and show that even the conceptual layer is also sensation on top of that. Then you look at perception and you're like, well, where does perception fit? Is perception awareness? And the definition typically is perception is the shaping and the reading of that data. Anyway, I don't want to make an argument why it's not a good system. It's great for some people. It's not my favorite system. So I often will it'll just slide away into the ether of my mind. So I don't know if that even begins to help answer the question, or if it's just more,
It helps. It helps.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Would you say self is a conceptual layer on top of sensations?
Well, remember that conceptual layers are just sensations. So I would say that self is a habit of body-mind. It is we could call it a formation. That's another term that's used in the Pali Canon. But we could call it a habit groove, a sanskara, a set of things that has happened together so many times that it happens so incredibly easily. And you can imagine why the body-mind would assert this so aggressively, so continuously. If you think about it, like, okay, this is the experience of me, and this is comically ridiculous. This is the experience of me, and it has been the same me since I was born. It's like, or since I first had consciousness, it's always been me. And it's like, it's like people who believe that the moon is actually like a base for reptiles. It's like, it's probably even more ridiculous than that. This idea that we've been the same self this whole time. If you dig into that, scratch the surface even a little bit, it's so at its surface ridiculous. And yet the experience is so certain. It's like, I think a lot of the time, like the self, the truths that it asserts are often like a teenager. They're so self-assured. This is how reality is. I'm the center of it, and like my view is the only one, and every other view is stupid. It's like, it's a little silly that way. So I don't know if that answers it all, or if that helps. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Question here as well.
Oh yeah, there you go. Ariadne, I see that you're on the line. Would you like to say hello here?
Hello. You got it right. Yep. It's Ariadne.
Awesome.
Second time tuning in. This is fun. I love it.
Yay. Lots of fun. Any questions or reports from the practice?
Practice goes every day. I'm getting places, tracking down selfing. It's subtle and fun to find.
Yeah.
Following Daniel's instructions, looking into the field for those little intention packets that are super dense. I'm just like, I'm not doing that. I'll do that later.
Yeah, that's great. And we just a second ago talking with Tom about sort of the experience of self and sort of how we detect that as a sensory experience. Anything from your experience that feels like it rhymes with that or contradicts what I was just saying?
I got most of the mental stuff down. For me, it's body sensations now. So like pain will arise, and then I'll lean away from it, and I'll go, "Uh-oh, I'm leaning away from it," and then I realize self has arise. So now I have some more tools to go about labeling it and tracking down the leaning away.
Yeah, great, excellent, lots of fun. Okay, so as we were chatting here, many comments have can't come and gone, so I'm gonna jump over to these. Let's see here. Hello, I'm French. Sorry for my bad grammar. This is Ulisfav. Well, Ulisfav, I'm not even seeing where you did you have a comment above that I missed that had terrible grammar? I don't see it. But if you did, please repost that because I do not see it, and I would love to respond if that's possible. Oh, welcome. I didn't get to say hello to John. Welcome from John in Queens. Good to see you here. Oh yeah, exactly. The lesson about using YouTube. It's like it's convenient, and that's great. But yeah, Chris says, "Is selfing volitional formations?" Okay, here is a very interesting thing. This is so. I get into this thing, and folks know me already that I get very like I'm like, oh my god, like I like Buddhist doctrine. I love it. It's fun. It's cool. It's interesting. It's useful, and I think it's one of those things where it's like the healthcare system in the United States. If we were to rewrite it from the beginning, we would not structure it this way. And I don't think if the Buddha were around today, he would be using the same words. You can just look at how much the Buddha's teaching progressed over the course of his life or his 40 years of teaching. We would just be using different words. So that said, I'm happy to jump into that. But what happens is there's a little bit of a fight between my personal experience, what I use to communicate these same sort of concepts to people, experiences to people, ideally, and some of the old terms. So with that whole caveat, I'll start from there. So the question is selfing volitional formations? So it depends what we mean by volitional. Depends what we mean by formations. If to explain this in like layman's terms, other non-Buddhist terms, is it volitional formations? No. The answer I would give is no, not completely. We know from studying our motor functions in the body, things that we can move, there's plenty that we can control. Oh, I can control my hand, right? But if I start moving my hand really, really quickly, right, I'm sort of controlling this, but I mean, even it just sort of looks out of control, right? There's a lot of the motor function here that's actually completely automatic. My hand knows what to do without me. So yes, I can have volition and direct some of this, but is this a volitional formation? A little bit questionable. And the same is true for our selfing phenomena, right? So selfing comes online very, very, very early on, right? They talk about, by age, by 9 months, 10 months, etc. There is a potential identification and sort of a separation of inside and outside, a kind of duality arises. So is that volitional? I don't know. I mean, okay, maybe. Is our experience of self volitional? Well, it depends if you're assigning volition to a will and saying, okay, the will is something that's driving this. Is it volitional in that we can observe the system doing something? Often that's how people will describe volitional. Oh, I see the system, like we'll be sitting there and a bell will ring, right? We'll be meditating, or someone will say, okay, we're almost done with the meditation, and the system lights up. Whoosh. And it's like, okay, what's next? I'm going to start putting, preparation energy in the body and this kind of thing. Is that volitional? Well, it's questionable. I like more that it's a habit group. I like the idea of the samskara, or that it's just momentum of having done this many, many times in the past, and that the neurons that wire together fire together. So selfing is a habit. It's a hologram. It says it's solid. It's there for survival and passing genetic material forward, typically, and it's a system to push this body mind forward to create another generation. Whether it makes us happy or not, totally unimportant. So hopefully that helps clarify. Let me know if it does or does not. Veritable Vagabond says, my question was, can I attain awakening with a PCE, pure consciousness experience? The answer is absolutely yes. 100% you can experience awakening with a pure consciousness experience. The thing is, I don't know what the definition of pure consciousness experience is. If we define pure consciousness experience to mean that which makes you awaken, then absolutely, 100%, no problem. But without further further clarification, it would be very hard to say. And my guess is that there is someone who says, okay, this is my definition of what this is, and then we can talk about that in particular. So if there's someone in particular, some particular theory that you want to explain or describe, maybe it's just a different set of words for something I already am familiar with. But the answer is absolutely. And if you ask the same question, can I experience awakening by dribbling a basketball, I'd say yes, absolutely, 100%. It's going to be a question of how you relate to that experience. So whether it's a transcendent experience or not, it has a lot to do with how the system relates. And also, one thing to keep in mind is that the awakening process, we're replacing, or rather reverting or switching to a different operating system. One that's maybe even, we could say, more fundamental. I don't know how do you extend this metaphor? Is it replacing the system that's already there, or is it actually going to a more underlying foundational operational system? I think we might say that it's actually, returning back to a much less layered, stacked operational system. Would be one way to talk about it. Okay, let's see. Wise Seclusion says, what is the relationship between stillness practice and abandoning self? Stillness practice. Well, that would be hard to say, because I think stillness practice, you mean staying still when you practice. And do you mean when I was just describing, stay still as we practice? If that's the case, it was just a matter of supporting the system not being pulled towards any particular impulse. So an impulse is pushed or pulled in any given direction. And so that just makes things a little easier to notice in terms of clarity and that kind of thing. Oh, everyone's joined us over on Twitch, so thanks for that. That's very nice. Remember, P.S., if you want to know when we're going live, etc., just hit the follow button. And then not only do you get a nice little animation on the screen, but then you get to know when we go live. Okay. Let's see. So hopefully that answers your question in terms of abandoning self. It's also that often impulses in the body will arise, and by not needing to follow those impulses, we're learning that to not have to be pulled into the gravitational well of those needs and potentially the selves that those needs are made out of. Okay, let's see. Ariadne says, it's like being... Ariadne says, it's like being Giles and Buddy, reading the old text and tracking down the self and testing it. But it's 2,500 years later. Who's Giles and Buddy? Okay, I don't know who Giles and Buddy. Oh, Buffy. Giles in Buffy. Oh, like the Vampire Slayer. I'm unfamiliar. Maybe that's a little gap in my cultural reference. Maybe we should watch. That's the other thing. I liked watching videos on the stream. Hey, let's watch little Buffy and see how it relates to an awakening practice. You can get banned right away. Banned on YouTube right away. Eventually, Twitch will catch up, but right now they're not tracking that closely. Morton 113, welcome, says, yeah, F YouTube and Google. I just came here to say hi, but they removed the video. Saivash. Yeah, so we'll see kind of what happens. I mean, it's funny because it's actually streaming to two YouTube channels. One is our main channel, and the other one is our secondary channel where we have all the backups. So this is still streaming. So apparently it didn't violate their terms of service on the other channel, which I don't know how that's possible. It can violate them in one place and not the other. So maybe I'll find out what they said the violation was, and we'll talk about that then. Let's see. the classical. Let's see. Chris Perrier says the classical Buddhist term fourth khandha. Okay. Okay, I'm not sure what it was. Probably something I was saying before. So, veritable vagabond. Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, so just so folks know, if you, well, I don't know. It's hard to tell if it's a. It says without double asterisk. So I'll just assume I covered that. Well, thank you for listening, Chris. Great to have you here. I know we got to define awakening then. I know, and I often, okay, so a reasonable sentence says, what is awakening? Is it the same as stream entry? Thanks. And then veritable vagabond says, thanks. Okay, so I'll answer this in my own personal way. And I think it's important when we hear a question like this to zoom out and check out what we mean and what our intentions are. So I'm happy to define awakening. A question that comes up in our communities, not infrequently, is: have you experienced awakening? Have you experienced stream entry? What level are you at? These kind of questions. I'm happy to answer those questions, but I also want to point to some of the challenges in that kind of question. But that's not the question you're asking. So maybe we'll get to that if that comes up. So the question you're asking: what is awakening, and is it the same as stream entry? Okay, so if I try not to keep a pat answer. I try to re-answer this every time so that it actually feels linked to my own personal experience. I would describe awakening as a permanent. Oh, it looks like we signed out of Google. Someone signed on, so it signed us out. Whatever. Signed out of Zoom. So I would describe awakening as a permanent shift in the way the system relates to, categorizes, perceives, and interacts with perceptual reality. It would be one that does not need to, coagulate into the typical narrative experience of self, one that has a very close and aware connection with the way our perceptual reality is dynamically being produced currently and in this present moment, and one that is experienced as liberating, as freeing. So that's my own personal current momentary definition, for whatever that's worth. Is it the same as stream entry? The definition in the set of circumstances that I personally like is the way that Shinzen describes it, is that there's no end to awakening. You can keep going, especially since when you start to consider that part of sure, you could have maybe this, imagine there was a ceiling, this is the top of awakening, you can't go anywhere past that. Well, can you do that while you're with your family? Can you do that while you're going to the bathroom? Suddenly, application into our lives. What is that sound? Accidentally the hair dryer was turned on and got plugged in. Anyway, neither here nor there. Hey, living life. So, geez Louise, what was I just saying? Babe, did you hear what I was just saying?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
Okay. What was I just saying? I got distracted. Now I'm totally confused. Something about awakening.
I think you were talking about what is awakening.
What is awakening? So, permanent rewriting of that system that is liberatory, right? So that's my current definition, the way I describe it. Is it the same as stream entry? What Shinzen would say, which I like, is that there's no end to awakening, but there is a beginning, and we could call stream entry that beginning. It is the no turning back point when the system, on its own through our work, but through the momentum of our practice, shifts us into a place where it can no longer return to this old way of perceiving without it being shown to be an illusion. So I get self-conscious 100%. It happens. This is one of the first things to really crack for me with self-consciousness. I totally get self-conscious. I totally get nervous, and I get, sometimes I'll wake up at night and be like, oh my God, that thing I need to do, right? All these normal, ordinary things happen to me. And if I observe them for the slightest amount of time, it just immediately is very clear that it's this, perceptual illusion. And that's in a way, it's a high bar. In a way, it's a very low bar. If you have meditation chops, it's actually available. At least stream entry is quite available. So that's what I'd say in terms of that. And then the way Shinzen describes it is you want to, guide people towards stream entry. And he doesn't say this really explicitly, but this is the way I interpret it. You want to guide people towards stream entry and then say, have fun, explore your life, get a better life, move towards your vision of reality, move towards what's important to you. I emphasize a lot when I start working with people, if we're working one-on-one, is what kind of life do you want after awakening? What do you want your life to look like after stream entry? Because it's this question that people very truly do not ask. And it's this question that is paramount to having a fulfilling life, because people will dedicate so much time and so much effort to this thing of stream entry, and they'll forget, hey, why am I doing this? And if I had to wave a wand and I could pick what would happen in the world, one side, everyone experiences stream entry. On the other side, everyone dedicates themselves to being more fulfilled, let's say. I would pick the latter 100 times. Because people, and this is a thing that is hard for people to understand, that you can experience awakening and still feel wildly unfulfilled. And the classic joke is that you return from the monastery having, experienced the first stages of enlightenment, and your taxes aren't paid and your spouse has left you. What kind of life do you want after stream entry? That is the big question. And if you gear yourself towards that life, well, stream entry is included in that, so that's fine. But, and it's also that there's not just one kind of awakening. Like anything, you could say, like, I want to be good at sinking 3-point shots. That's what I want. That's my goal. Well, there's all sorts of ways to do that, right? Not only are there different positions and postures we could talk about, but there's also just certain style, right? Some people can do it with total, I'm not a big basketball person, but some people can do these athletic things with total class and style, and this way of doing it is very bouncy. Some people it's extremely technical and dry, these kind of things. All of these are going to play out in our process. So do we do this as a game that's fun, that's fascinating? Do we do this with grim determination, where if I don't get this thing, it's and the results of that they're gonna pan out. We're going to experience awakening, extreme entry, this kind of thing. If we just give it Shinzen talks about, if we just give it the same amount of effort as a serious hobby, we're going to move there over time. What kind of life do we want after awakening? That's the key. And so I realize I have to jump off here. I got a student coming up. There's some more comments here. I wanted today to talk about how this reordering that's happening with the virus and being at home, etc., it really is an opportunity internally, personally, and societally to decide, do I want things to be the same way they were before, or are there parts of that I wasn't really into? And I think I want to talk about that more next time, because I think it's a full discussion. We'll talk about that after Wednesday's live stream. So that's in less than 48 hours. So many people having so much fun here, saying hello. Anna Heilsmith, welcome. Nice to see you here. How do I observe and deal with depression? Well, that is a big question. So let me put a pin in that, because we're reaching the end of the stream here. But we can just take a whole stream and answer that. But I'll mention before I go away that stream entry, classical awakening, does not inoculate us from being a human. I've yet to meet someone who has transcended human yet. Haven't seen it. I've had Daniel Ingram here on the stream recently, and we were talking about how there's this illusion that if people can just experience stream entry, then they won't have to take their meds, or they won't have to go to the doctor, or people, finding out that, Ram Dass, was many years ago, had a stroke, and they're completely disappointed. They're like, how is this possible? It's helpful to know that distance, here is the imagined, elusive, awakened person, and then here's me who has to, deal with mental health and go to a counselor, or whatever real human things. And there's such a big distance. Well, maybe that's why it seems so impossible and seems so unattainable, and we're sort of denying ourselves. So there's no degree of self-denial that's going to get us to stream entry faster. It's only actually really self-acceptance, awareness. So I say that to say that all of the classical things that we might use to work with depression are relevant, right? So connecting with friends and family, moving towards the things that are meaningful to us, volunteering, exercise, eating well, all of these are important factors. And awakening and just meditation in general can be really, really fruitful in that. Right now we've been doing this multiple self model series, which is modeled after internal family systems and psychology. So just know that there is a strong correlation between these, and it's important that we do the things we need to in life. But we can talk more about that on a full other stream. Reasonable Sentence says, what would you say about the definition of awakening as an experience of ultimate truth? And what about the folks who say everyone already is enlightened, so that enlightenment is a non-thing? Okay, so these are some big old questions. So I'm not gonna rush. Let me just make sure I'm not gonna like bump into. Okay, I have a few minutes. Yeah. Okay. So let me take these one at a time. Reasonable Sentence. You said, what about the definition of awakening as the experience of ultimate truth? Depends how we define ultimate. Depends on how we define truth. What I would say in the simplest way is the experience of perceptual awakening. And I want to emphasize perceptual because that doesn't mean you become morally perfect, as we've seen evidence by many people who've have plenty of moral failings. Perceptual awakening gives you a huge shift in perspective. Now, if you call that perspective truth, great. You can call that ultimate truth. But I have read it, and hung out with and identified with enough Foucault to feel a little suspicious of anything that claims to be, this sort of pure ultimate truth. Ultimately, it's just perception. It's just human experiencing. We don't step outside of ordinary human experiencing. Of course, it's worth mentioning that ordinary human experiencing is very can be very, very psychedelic and very unordinary. That's part of the ordinary experience of human experiencing. So that's what I'd say about the ultimate truth. And you capitalize ultimate truth, so maybe that's another definition that I'm not aware of, another system. And what about the people who say you're already enlightened, so enlightenment is a non-thing? Well, it's a pedagogical form of how to move people towards, or in that case, it's not move people towards something. It's to get things out of the way, right? Okay, you're already enlightened, but there's just junk in the way. So it's your point to connect with the part of you that is awakened. So the mind is very good at observing contrasts. So these are just contrasting views of saying the same thing. Enlightenment is a thing to get to, right? So you pass through all this stuff, you go through a linear path, and then you get there, which is the sort of linear, you could say Theravada model. You're here, awakening's over there. And this other one, this is all often expressed in, somebody, what was that alert here? I'm just going to take a look if we just had a follower. Nope. Okay, I thought somebody had just followed. We could talk about this linear path, and the other one is this idea that there is no sort of, it's in a way, it's a different relationship to time, that this moment here, this is it, you're already awakened, and there's stuff in the way, or there's, something stopping you from experiencing it as awakening. It's another model. It's another model to do the same thing, whereas you say, okay, here's a nice thing. You can try this as a practice. What about this moment is not awake, is not what I would consider or experience as enlightened? Hard for me to find anything, right? That's a pretty excellent model. It works really well. And so, the way I work is a meta-systemic model. So I like to look at why all of these models are right, why all of them work. And to point out the fact that the model and the way that I do things is just my quirky personal way that I like. It's not the right way. So I would experiment with both. That's the bigger thing, is experiment for yourself. Which one of these models helps you have a more fulfilling life? That's, for me, is the measure, rather than which one creates trippier effects. It's about having a fulfilling life. So hopefully that helps answer that question, but I can answer in more detail some other time. Okay, so Nick says, yeah, always wondered whether people want their wife and kids to look like after, that's funny, want their kids and wife to look like after awakening. Exactly. It's like, what kind of, what do I want these people to look like after awakening? I think you're joking. But yeah. So Ariadne says, please take your medicine and see your therapist and do your practice. Thank you. I agree entirely. I will take my medicine. I will definitely see my therapist. I will definitely do my practice. In this case, my medicine is mostly, water and green tea right now. But there have been times in my life where I've absolutely used, I talk to people about this all the time, that after all of the really, really dense experiences, a few years ago in my life, I went to a doctor and they're like, yeah, your body's not producing serotonin. And I was like, oh, what's that called? And they're like, it's called depression. And I think I had I actually had a false sense of how I was doing, in part because of the practice. In part, a lot of it, what it was because of my perception of what reality was supposed to be like, or what I imagined depression was. But it was, I just thought, hey, there's times when I need to take a nap, and they're so intense that it doesn't matter what else is happening, and that can happen in the middle of the day, whether I'm tired or not. And, it's like, whatever, either way, it was like, a lack of serotonin. So working on that has been, it's been fun. It's been interesting. So let's see here. Let's see. Param says, hooray. Happy to hear IFS making its way into the conversation. Such a nice compliment to the meditation path in my experience. Absolutely. So Param, if you want to look back at playbacks for this, the last, I think they're numbered. This should be number 5. We've been doing a sort of intensive, from the meditation perspective view of internal family systems, but we've done this a bunch. We're really interested in this, Raquel and I. I'm trying to see if I can get into this IFS training to get a little more official, which would be fun. Other than just doing it from my own experience, which actually the training is, you just do it from your own experience. A lot of it is. Let's see. Great answer. Thank you so much. Just joking, unless proven otherwise. Yeah, that would be cool, though, if you could just be like, okay, I'm going to awaken, and then what do I want my taxes to look like when I return? Folks, it was lovely to have you here. As always, it is such a delight to take this time with you. The folks who joined us over here on Zoom, I point over here because there's another monitor over there. That doesn't mean anything to you. Spatially, it's over here. Thank you for the folks who came here on Zoom. Especially thank you for everyone who is practicing diligently, facing those challenging parts of ourselves and just talking about it, having fun. Folks, in fewer than 48 hours, we will be back here to chit-chat again, to keep our practice going continuously, nice and smooth. This is an effort to support folks in developing their continuity and developing their practice, making it richer, bigger, more fun in that way. Feel free to follow here on Twitch. If you want to support, you can do the subscribe button, which is lovely. We totally appreciate that. We also have a Patreon. That's lovely as well. But mainly just being present is really, really wonderful. It's good to have folks here. Have fun, having a good time. So folks, I'm going to put on this closing music, but of course I can still hear you. As always, folks, have a lovely, lovely few hours between now and when we next meet. It's always good to be here with you. And please let me know if any questions arise. If you want to jump on our Discord, which I can drop in the chat here. Anyone can. It's !D. And our Discord appears. Feel free to ask any questions offline, or just chat with each other. It's a nice place to connect and chat and that kind of thing. Folks, again, great to see you. Hopefully get a chance to see you soon. And my wish for you in the following day is simply to allow the various parts of ourselves to arise, to recognize them, to see them as natural, to see them as expressing needs and wants that could be helpful, and to be able to meet those needs as best you can, just by being friendly and kind and listening. Okay, folks, have a lovely day. Look forward to seeing everyone soon.